start. My name is Rich. I'm the summer interpreter or tour guide here at Lawrence Heritage, and we are now into the last month of the summer season of the Bring Your Own Lunch presentations. After today, we have 3 remaining ones, and the schedule is on the back table there, okay, for August. So if you haven't gotten one already, feel free to help yourself there, and that lists the August summer schedule for the brown bag lunches, the Bring Your Own Lunch program. So, and as always, help yourself to any refreshments there on the table to my left, either now or when we're done here today. Help yourself. And so today we have Amita Kiley from Lawrence History Center. She is the research coordinator and collections manager, right?
Yes.
So Amita, who has spoken here in the past for this program, she will be our guest speaker today. And as you can see, she brought a lot of goodies with her, right?
Yes.
From the Lawrence History Center, which I'm sure she'll tell us all about. And then, of course, people can take a look after if they haven't already. So, all right, so again, thank you all for coming today to help yourself to the snacks, and I will now turn it over to Amita Kiley.
Thank you, Rich. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today and for having me speak, Rich, about the Lawrence History Center. For those who don't know, we're located on 6 Essex Street in the former Essex Company headquarters. I brought this banner that shows our front door, so you may have driven by here before and wondered what was inside. And so today I'm going to tell you about what we do at the Lawrence History Center, a little bit about the history of our organization. I'll talk about what I brought today, and I'll talk about ways you can get involved if you want either volunteering or research or coming to different events. So the Lawrence History Center was founded in 1978 as the Immigrant City Archives, and we were founded by a German immigrant named Eartha Dengler. Eartha lived through World War II in Germany with her husband and her children, and could not wait to leave the country and come to the United States. So she survived the war, and in the 1950s she was able to immigrate to the United States. Eartha settled in Andover, Massachusetts, but she volunteered at different places in Lawrence. And one of the places where she volunteered was the YWCA, which of course is still here today on the Common. And one of the tasks that they gave Eartha when she started volunteering at the Y was just to clean out one of the closets that they had. So a nice simple task for a new volunteer. So when she opened that closet, she found all of the YWCA's original records from the 1890s going forward. So all of the records of the different immigrant women that lived at the Y that were involved in it, records of meetings they held, all kinds of information on world events and how they affected the Y and how they affected the women at the Y, maybe more local issues that the women at the Y faced. It was a wonderful, not even a snapshot because it was a long view of life in Lawrence from 1890 till about 1970s, a view of women in Lawrence, of immigrant women in Lawrence, and what was going on in the city. And especially through such a lens of, in the 1890s and a little bit forward, Lawrence was the height of industrialization, was the woolen capital of the world. The strike of 1912 occurred and other strikes, and then when deindustrialization happened in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and urban renewal happened, again, the YWCA records reflected that time. So it was just a treasure that was in that closet. And so Eartha thought maybe they don't know what's in there. And when she said there's all these important records, the founding records, you don't want me to throw those away, right? And they didn't really have use for them. And so they said they just didn't need them. And so being an immigrant herself and a woman and interested in women's history, Eartha thought these records are way too important to just throw away. So she started to try to find a place that could take all these records. So she first asked the Merrimack Valley Textile Museum, which used to be in North Andover. Then it moved to Lowell, and it closed in 2016. But they weren't interested in the records because those records of the YW were primarily immigrant voices and people's stories. They were more interested in textiles, machinery, and that aspect of history. So it just got her to thinking, getting lost if this amazing collection is unwanted. So she founded Immigrant City Archives in 1978, and that is our organization. Now we're called Lawrence History Center, but Immigrant City Archives was our original name. And so the first collection that Eartha had was given were the records of the YWCA, because they gave those to Eartha. Because I'm sure they knew they were important, they just couldn't themselves save them. So Eartha had a small room at the YWCA. Probably the records that they gave her stayed in that closet for a little while. And after Eartha incorporated, she started going to different anyone she knew, or neighborhood organizations, or churches, or businesses, anyone that she knew or even didn't know, because Eartha would go to anyone to ask if they had material they wanted to donate to Immigrant City Archives. And she would tell them, it's very important that we preserve this history and that we preserve these stories and these voices. And it's important that people have a place that know their story is important and that know their voice is important and that it's preserved. And so Eartha, I know some of you knew Eartha, and Phyllis worked with Eartha early on, and Richard, I think, knew Eartha. Others may have. Eartha was very determined, and she just was so passionate and had such vision and such foresight to think in the 1970s, Lawrence was in a rough time, but to know this history is so important and we need to start saving it, otherwise it's going to be lost. So Eartha convinced others. So she had people who volunteered with her, who would also help collect and preserve this material. And the archive began to grow. And a few years later, she was outgrowing her room at the YWCA. So she then moved into the South Lawrence branch of the library. And she had a room there. And again, continued to collect. People continued to donate items. Volunteers continued to work with Eartha. And it was all done on a shoestring budget, if any budget. This was, from the beginning, was a labor of love and passion and knowing how important it was. So Eartha and the people who helped her early on just all shared that care for Lawrence history and care for this immigrant story of Lawrence. So again, she's collecting and people are donating things. One thing that Eartha, again, it was really important for her to collect people's voices, people's stories, because for so long, especially living through World War II in Germany, differences of ethnicities was not celebrated at all. It was the opposite. So she just found it so important to celebrate the immigrant history of the city. So she started to interview people to do oral histories. So she would ask someone, she focused a lot on the strike of 1912, wanting to interview people who lived through the strike of 1912 or whose family was involved in it. And she wanted to capture those stories because that generation was getting older, and she knew how important it was to get these firsthand stories on record. Also at that time, the strike of 1912 was beginning to be talked about again, because for so long after, it was kind of a dirty secret. It was quieted, and it wasn't spoken about with the reverence that it is today. It was the opposite back then. So Eartha had tape recorders and would just sit with someone and interview them. And other volunteers helped with that as well, interviewing people. So Eartha just had such a vision to capture this information while it was still around, before it was thrown away. One issue that she ran into was that people would wonder why she wanted it, because they would think their story wasn't that important, or they might say, I just worked in the mills, I didn't do anything, what do you want that for? But that's exactly what she wanted, because these people who lived in Lawrence from the beginning till now and currently, that's the heart and soul of the city, not just the rich business owners or the mill owners or the mayors or the higher ups, the people who had everyday life in Lawrence, who worked in the mills, went to school here, went to church here, because that's what makes the history so interesting, is because it's so varied. So again, it was collecting, and then finally, in the early 90s, the headquarters of the Essex Company went on the market, and the Essex Company was the group that created Lawrence from land in Methuen and Andover on both sides of the river in the 1840s. And they built their headquarters in Lawrence in 1883. Before that, they had a smaller building or a smaller office, but they really needed their own headquarters. So in 1883, they built what's called the Essex Company Complex, and it's on 6 Essex Street. And they were in that complex from 1883 when it was built through about the 1980s or so, but eventually the property came on the market. And so Eartha thought that would be a perfect home for Immigrant City Archives. Prior to that, the Essex Company and Barry Flynn had given the Essex Company records to the Immigrant City Archives, but they were still housed at the Essex Company. So we own the records, but we weren't with them. So this would reunite us with the records. So Eartha was able to purchase from Wilfred Sear, who owned the Essex Company property. Eartha was able to purchase it through such generosity of Mr. Sear, who forgave some of the mortgage, Chet Seidel, who some of you may know was a wonderful, wonderful early supporter, and without him we wouldn't be in this building today. But through the generosity of people who really cared about our mission. So in 1992, we took ownership of the company headquarters and moved in, and of course have been there ever since, and will stay there forever. The property is on the National Register of Historic Places. It was, again, built in 1883. It consists of a main office building, which this is the doorway to, and then in a courtyard surrounded by a brick wall with two big red gates that are open when we're open. And in the courtyard, there's a two-story carpenter shop, two-story warehouse, a stable, sheds, a working blacksmith shop, and then parking. So if you ever visit us, you can park right in the courtyard. You don't have to pay for parking or worry about getting a ticket. The blacksmith shop, as I said, still works today. We have a blacksmith named Richard Wright, who's been coming for the last 10 or 11 years and doing demonstrations in the blacksmith shop every September for Trails and Sales. So he'll be here in September, the third Saturday, I believe the 24th. But if you look on our website, you'll see the exact date from 9 to 1. And he'll be actually working in the blacksmith shop so you can see it in action. And so Lawrence History Center, we are mostly during the day just in the office building. We have just two staff. We have an executive director, Susan Grabsky, and she's on the first floor. And Susan takes care of writing grants for the History Center. We're a nonprofit. We're not city or state funded. We don't have an endowment, so we raise all our own money. We're constantly trying to raise money to preserve the property, preserve the building, to preserve the material you see, to pay our salaries. So we're always trying to raise money. So our executive director is always working on writing grants. We invite people to take out memberships at the Lawrence History Center, and membership allows you access to the collection, which you can do research with. We have a small gift shop, and we have an online gift shop as well for those who can't visit, where we sell books and posters and copies of photographs. We host an annual Eartha Dengler History Award dinner, which is also a fundraiser, where we honor people who've made significant contributions to Lawrence history. And we do an annual appeal every November where we send out a request for donations. We take donations in all kinds of ways, check or cash or credit card. Some people donate stocks. There's all kinds of ways, bequests. So we're always very appreciative of the generosity of our members and the local foundations and local cultural councils and groups that support the Lawrence History Center, because that's how we're able to do what we do. We only have staff of 2, like I said. I'm the collections manager and research coordinator. So what I do at the History Center is take care of all these things that you see here. This is only a small sampling, but I take care of the collection. So how do we get all this material? We get it through donations. We don't purchase material off eBay or in antique stores. We just don't have the budget for that. But luckily, people are so generous. Even today, to this day, we get things donated. So they donate items. So items that you see here have all been donated by local people, by people who live far away. And what we do is we take care of them and we preserve them in our archives, but we also make them available for research. So if someone wants to look at an old Lawrence High yearbook, they can come to the History Center and look at, for example, I brought a few today, 1972, and another one, and look through it. So what people donate is used to help other people do research. So it's not like it sits in a box and is never seen, it's used. We're not a museum because we just don't have the room for that. So we don't have items on display or exhibits on display. But when people come to our doors, we always tell them that we're not a museum, but they're welcome to come to the state see Barb and see Rich, but we always show them, or offer to show them the building, because the building itself is a sight to see, because it's, again, on the National Register of Historic Places, and it has vaults inside, and beautiful architecture, and brickwork. And so we like to just get people in the doors, because before we were in there, and it was the Essex Company headquarters, you couldn't just walk in and look around, or walk in and say, oh, can I see the vault? You could only go in if you had a reason to be there, if you were doing business with the Essex Company. So we'll get people who have, lived in Lawrence years ago, and now they're adults or they're retired, and they'll say, I've never been in here, I've always wanted to come in. And now they can just come in. And so it's kind of neat, because kids today growing up in Lawrence have the opposite experience of this older generation, where they're always welcome to come in and see what's in the History Center. We're not the Essex Company anymore. So people come in, and just so they know that we're there. One thing that was really important to Eartha, and is important to us, and is only, it's kind of obvious, but maybe not so much unless you really think about it, is that you want to keep collecting history and keep documenting the history of, or documenting what's happening currently, because before you know it, that time passes, and if you didn't document anything, you have a big gap in your collection. So that was very important to Eartha, to keep documenting the history as it was happening. So in the collection, we have things as new as material on the gas disaster, or COVID, or the 2023 Lawrence High School graduation program, because we want to keep collecting and keep growing the collection. And so one way to do, so that's very important, but also very important is that the community knows we're here and knows they can use us, that we're a resource, that we're not, you don't even need a reason to come to the History Center. Like, you don't have to be a student or an author doing research. You can come for any reason, just because you're interested, because you're wondering what's in the History Center, if you want to know what we have in the collection. We're really a community archive. We like that the community comes in. Because if we're the Lawrence History Center and get no Lawrence people, then we're doing something wrong. Because you can't survive and thrive and flourish if you're stuck in the past only, or you only document the past, or you don't reach the current community, because we want our successors to care about Lawrence history the way we do, the way Eartha did. So it's really important that we're always keeping connected with the community, especially with the young people. So we have the two staff, me and our director, Susan. And then we have wonderful volunteers and interns that help out, and work study students. So we have some UMass Lowell interns currently who are just about finishing up. We tend to always get UMass Lowell students, wonderful UMass Lowell history majors. We also get English majors, which makes sense, because a lot of cataloging the collection involves a lot of writing and even research sometimes. We have high school students that come and do research. We even in the past had students from the local charter school who have to do volunteer hours, who did volunteer work at the Lawrence History Center. So that's how we're able to get a lot done, is through the help of our volunteers. Without that, we would have a big backlog of material. So some of the things we have in the archives are the Essex Company records. So again, those were given to us by the Essex Company, and they're in the vaults at the History Center. So we have all of the founding records of Lawrence. So Lawrence was created from land that was Methuen on the north side of the Merrimack River, and Andover on the south side of the Merrimack River. And the men who formed the Essex Company in 1845 knew that if they bought up enough land on both sides of the river, built a dam, built canals, and essentially laid out a city, they could have a very prosperous textile city, with mills originally running on water power. So we have the records at the History Center of how they did that. Who did they buy the land from to make Lawrence? Who owned the land before it was Lawrence? How much did they pay for the land? We have all kinds of financial information left behind by the Essex, or given by the Essex Company, I should say. So any kind of financial transactions or checks or stock certificates, even receipts. We have a receipt for when the building was electrified, which was in 1913, so they worked for a good 40 years or 30 years without electricity. We have gas jets in the building that you can see. That's how they lit the building. But all kinds of that information they received for paint they bought. So they kept beautifully organized records, all in this, they're in the vault, our first floor vault, that has all kinds of that information. But then because the Essex Company also, of course, employed engineers because they had to build the Great Stone Dam, how do you stop the Merrimack River and build a dam? It seems impossible. So they had to do that. They had to figure out how to do that. And so they employed people, engineers that built a cofferdam first to stop a little bit of the river while they built the dam, and did it kind of in stages. And they actually started it in August 1845. At that point, the river was at the lowest it would be. It was dry, a little drier that year than this year, that summer. And so the people who built the dam under the leadership of the Essex Company were the Irish immigrants who were leaving Ireland because of the potato famine. So they came to Lawrence, and they worked for the Essex Company building the dam. And they lived on the south side of the river in an area that was called Shanty Pond, and they lived in just little shacks that they paid rent to the Essex Company for. Certainly had no heat or any comforts. It was just really little shacks that they lived in. And the dam was built in exactly 3 years to the day, from start to finish. And at the same time the Great Stone Dam was being built, the North Canal, right outside our window, was also being carved. It didn't exist before. It was carved by hand, really, with pickaxes. And we have a pickaxe at the History Center that they used in it. And it was carved and built, again, by these laborers. And the Great Stone Dam in the North Canal, once built, provided water power to the textile mills. So the Essex Company built some of the mills to show this can work. See, the dam's providing enough water power, and this will work. And then they started so the land they bought was like woods and farmland. It wasn't really developed. So the Essex Company started to lay out the land and develop it. One of the things they did was designate an area of land that they gave to the city of Lawrence, and that was the land where the North Common is. And now that common is called Campagnone Common, dedicated after World War II for the 3 Campagnone brothers who died in World War II. But that common, that land, was given to the city, and there are restrictions on that land. So every couple of years, maybe not every couple of years, but every now and then there'll be plans. Someone wants to put a splash park on the common, or years ago they wanted to put basketball courts, or even parking one time was thrown out as an idea. That's not allowed. The common is restricted. It has to really say how it is. There are allowances for seating or paths, which are already on there, but it's not a common that can be developed on every inch. The point was to have a nice green space in this hard-working, crowded textile city. So the Essex Company gave the common. They laid out the streets of Lawrence. So if you ever look at a map, especially in this area, you'll see the streets are very grid-like, and that was because they were laid out purposely and sectionally by the Essex Company. So we have all of those maps and drawings and even little surveying books, like big as my hand, that show the different streets and what was it good to build on? Was it all sandy or gravelly? Or could it be built on? Or was it swampy? So we have all this information that the Essex Company, that they created as they created the city. And that's why studying Lawrence is really incredible, because it was a planned city, and we still have the records that they planned, that they used when they planned the city. And not a lot of cities can say that, because other towns or cities maybe grew slowly. And to have Lawrence that was planned, started to be built and developed so quickly, and to still have those records, we're so lucky. And we have researchers from all over the world that contact the History Center or visit us to study Lawrence history, and for all different reasons. We'll have, mostly we'll have people who have a personal connection to the city, so they have relatives that worked in the mills, or had a business here, or lived here, or even still live here sometimes, or they have someone who only lived here a few years and maybe they went back to Italy, or they went back to Germany, or somewhere in Canada, or even Argentina. We had someone. So that's why the researchers come from all over the world, because people from all over the world came here and still come here to this day. just in general, you could trace it back to Lawrence. If you wanted to study urban renewal or immigration or labor, you could also study that in Lawrence. So Lawrence is a great place to study and to do research with. And so that's what we are. Our mission is to collect, preserve, share, and animate the history and heritage of Lawrence and its people. And we do that by preserving the material that is donated to us. And we do research for people. Like I said, people are welcome to come in and do research on their own. We're always with you. We help you with it. The material we have does not leave the building, except for days like today. So if one of you come and wanted to look at a book but also take it home, we don't allow the material to circulate, but you certainly can stay all day and look at whatever you wanted. And again, and so we ask that researchers join as members, and that's a way to fundraise for us. Lawrence students are always free. They don't have to take out a membership ever. They're free. Lawrence students who live in Lawrence. And we get, like I said, we get students from Lawrence High or Phillips Academy, the different high schools, different colleges, and then certainly business owners. We have people from the city who come to do research from the different departments in the city, the Veterans Office or the City Council. People from local businesses will come and do research. But we're just really open to everyone. What we feel at the History Center is the history is so important and it's just so interesting that we want everyone to feel how we do about what we have, about the collection and about Lawrence history. Because the more people that care about it, the longer it will last. And it's really just a beautiful history that is pretty short when you think Lawrence is pretty young compared to our counterparts like Andover, Methuen, but it has such a rich we're proud to preserve at the History Center. So some of the things I brought today, I'll talk about them a little, but we'll have time to go through them. We have some photographs and postcards. In our collection, we have about 40,000 photographs and maybe a few thousand postcards. And they're photos of all different things related to Lawrence history. It could be schools or churches or mills. Some of our material is digitized, and if you go on our website, we have links to what is digitized. But most of it's not, so you cannot see it unless you're in person. Sometimes though we'll scan something if someone cannot visit and we have a picture of their relative, we'll certainly scan it and digitize it and send it to them. But the majority of material you really have to be in person to see. We try to get our inventories online, so some of the material, maybe Lawrence High material, I might have pulled out of a box of Lawrence High, and we have about 7 boxes of related to Lawrence High School, and it's classes from, the very first one, again, up to 2023. So someone might be able to go on and see the different folders inside the box, and we might have, say, a graduation program from 1950, and if someone's relative was in that, we'll scan the program and give it to them. But it's always great when you can come in person, because there's nothing like going through the original material and being in person and being in the History Center building, because it's, again, such a historic place. It's a really nice setting to do research in. So I don't know, Richard, if there's anything that I didn't touch on that...
Well, you were very thorough. Maybe before we open it up to questions, maybe you want to just, in case anybody's interested in any volunteer opportunities, can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, so for volunteering, we offer all kinds of opportunities. There's different things depending on what you like. So we have some people who don't want anything to do with a computer, so I wouldn't have them do something on the computer. So they might organize boxes that come in. So for example, we have few volunteers at the History Center now. 2 of them don't like to use a computer. So one of them is organizing. So I talked about how we document current history. So we have a collection on Lazarus House Ministries, which celebrated, I think, their 40th anniversary recently. And we have 2 huge folders of newsletters that they've sent over the years, and programs and booklets and all that kind of thing. And they seem to be a little out of order. So one of our volunteers is working on putting them in order by year, because the folks from Lazarus House came to the History Center a few weeks ago, and we let them look through that so they can see what we have on their organization organization. So one person is doing that. Someone else, so when people donate photos to us, we don't give them the original photos to look through, because if you go through them all through the years, they'll get ruined. So we make nice clear copies of the original photos. We label the photocopy with what it is, and then the original photos go in an acid-free enclosure and then in an acid-free box in a vault and closed. So the original is preserved. So what another volunteer now is working on is doing that, copying some photos and then putting them in the proper enclosures. And then that just keeps things moving. We have another volunteer who is fine using the computer and is also really good at organizing. So she's actually going through our Lawrence Public Schools collection because it's so big. And we're always trying to better organize our records as things come in and as things are donated. So she is working on that. So she's not only organizing it, but then we'll also put inventories of the folders in our computer, in the database. So if someone is wondering, oh, what do we have on the Leahy School, they can search our database, and they won't see the actual items, but they'll see we have a program for graduation or a report card or a photo. So helping to catalog is always something that people can help with. Even cleaning records. So when things are donated, we don't just take it and then put it in the box. Sometimes there's work that we have to do to get it ready for a researcher. So we got an incredible collection back in 2017 from the Wood family. And the collection was the records of the American Woolen Company, and that was the biggest company in the textile industry. William Wood was the president. And so we got about maybe almost 75 or 100 boxes of these original records of the biggest company in the textile industry. So what an honor that the Wood family gave them to the History Center, number one, but just to have such a rich collection is incredible. And so the records were, 100 years old, more than 100 years old. So what one of our volunteers did, Tom Walsh, spent really years going through them, and a lot of them the staples had rusted over time, or they were pinned together to keep them fastened, but they rusted, or paper clips. So Tom went through and carefully removed anything rusted, threw that away. Then he would wipe the records with a cloth and literally clean them. Then he would refasten them with a piece of acid-free paper to bundle them, and then a stainless steel paper clip over the acid-free paper. Then he would put them in new folders. And that's called processing a collection, and that's common. Any archive will do that because it's better for the collection when you store it as, in ideal conditions. So that's something that a volunteer might work on too. Sometimes helping researchers. So we have another volunteer, Kathy Flynn, and Tom, who I just mentioned, Kathy, who I'm mentioning now, they were two of the 4 recipients of our most recent Arthur Dagler History Award. Hammy Mead and Bob Ferrant were the other two. Kathy's been volunteering at the History Center almost since the beginning. She was president of the board at one time. Tom has been volunteering for about 20 years. And Kathy helps, she's our head researcher, so she answers the research requests that come in. So for people who cannot visit, they'll email us and ask all kinds of things. And they'll ask about genealogy, they'll ask if we have a picture of a business, that's what she's working on now. So that's another thing volunteers work on. So there's always different projects to do. This summer, I actually was just a rare position to be in, where we had so many people and we had some interns that we didn't have just physical room for anyone else to join, any new volunteers to join. So a few people had reached out at the beginning of the summer wanting to volunteer, and I asked them to reach back out in the fall, just because we had so many people. Because I don't want someone just sitting around and waiting for a project, or if I don't have a project for them, I don't want to give them busy work. So, but it's a great position to be in, to have so many people who want to help out. So if anyone is interested, in the fall is when we would be welcoming new volunteers. We're open Tuesday through Friday from 9 to 4. It's always good to make an appointment ahead of time because we're, again, staff just of 2. Mondays we're closed to the public, but I'm there usually, so that could be a time for an appointment as well. And then we can also do weekend appointments if someone can't come on a weekday too, which I'd be as accommodating as we can.
All right, thank you for elaborating on that.
Does anyone have any questions? Or yeah, Phyllis.
You said the Essex Company donated the land for the North Common.
Yes.
Did they also donate the land for the South Common?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, and I would have to look it up. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, Richmond.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think so, but I have to double check those.
Yeah.
But I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I think I read an Essex Company pamphlet. Maybe read it from the New Rich. I don't know how in-depth that is though, but yeah, we could check, but I don't think so either that I've heard. One really interesting item that we have relating to the South Common is it was dedicated to, it's called the O'Connell South Common, after Philip O'Connell, who died in World War I. And we have his diary at the History Center. And it's so beautiful. It's sad because he died in the war, but it's so beautiful. There's some drawings in it that I think his sister did after, some illustrations. But he talks about just the last entry before he died, how you can hear the bombs. It's just such a beautiful piece to have and to think about what he was going through, and that we have that. That always is something that just amazes me. So I grew up in Lawrence, and I went to school in Lawrence, went to the Leahy and then Holy Trinity School, then Presentation to Mary and Methuen for high school. Then I went to Northeastern University for college, and I commuted. And I thought I wanted to be a history teacher or social studies teacher because I loved my history and social studies teachers I had growing up. They were my favorite classes, and I loved the subjects. And so I did a little substitute teaching after I graduated. But for my co-op job at Northeastern University, the co-op program where you work somewhere in your field while you go to school. And so for my co-op job, I started at Immigrant City Archives back then in May of 2001. And so I did my co-op there throughout being at Northeastern, and stayed on even when it wasn't the co-op semester, I still worked there. And then even after I graduated in 2004 from Northeastern, I stayed on at the History Center a couple times a week. And then in 2009, I became full-time. And then in 2015, I became collections manager and research coordinator. But I just loved history, and especially growing up in Lawrence, I feel such a connection to this material and like a duty to preserve it and make it available. So I just couldn't be happier being there, and I like getting other people excited too, and to just be, to be able to work with this material. That was what I was going to say, was that I never take for granted that like every day I work in this building, and the office I'm in is the former chief engineer's office of the Essex Company, and it's just such a beautiful building to be in, and to be able to just go and touch this material. We have a scrapbook of Robert Tewksbury. He was cashier for the Essex Company. He was a Lawrence historian. To be able to just touch a scrapbook and look through it, it's amazing. Or to be able to, we can touch these pieces that were made in the mill. Just to have such close access to Lawrence history is really quite a privilege that I'm so privileged to have, and that I'm happy to share with other people. Any more questions? Yeah.
What is this?
So I can pick up now. I might have Do I need the microphone around? Okay. You asked about this for this, right? Okay, so these are all pieces from the collection. This is a Lawrence General Hospital School of Nursing cape that was worn, actually, I don't know if I have the name of the person who it was worn by. This was donated by Joe Bella. Joe Bella, I'm sure you know. Actually, probably this was donated by Joe as well. He's a wonderful, wonderful collector. He was on our board, on our collections committee. But the Lawrence General Hospital had a school of nursing, and the women who went to the school of nursing would then go on to become nurses at Lawrence General. And the members of the Lawrence General Hospital School of Nursing Alumni Association, and also women who just went to that school of nursing over the years have donated different things. Some of them being the cloak or the cape, and so they would wear this. Women who went to Lawrence General Hospital School of Nursing would wear that. You can see the LGH here. And so we have a few of these in the collection. Years ago, we had a public health exhibit, and we had this on display at the History Center. And so in addition to this, we also have nursing uniforms that were worn over the years by the different nurses during over time. So we have one from 1902 that goes all the way up to the neck, down to the floor, and it's long sleeves, and the sleeves here there's buttons, so you can unbutton this, and then this part comes off. So I wonder if that was maybe for hygiene, like if they would take off that part and wash it, or if I'm not sure exactly why, but there's that. Then there's another nursing uniform that's pinstriped and more recent. We have rings from the Lawrence General School of Nursing. We have a beautiful like a candle or a lamp that was used in the different ceremonies they had. So we have a wonderful collection on that. And we also have a collection from the Lawrence General Hospital itself. So you can learn about the history of the hospital and look at old records and an old, like we have an old syringe that they would use, and it's glass. So all kinds of, a clean one, all kinds of information. We have actually a really in-depth, a health collection. Actually, this is part of it. A very in-depth public health collection. And how we got most of it was that Eartha and other early volunteers rescued it from basements. So the old Bessie Burke Hospital, before it was torn down, Eartha went in and took the ledgers from the basement and saved them. Or there were things in the basement at City Hall, or just things that were just laying around that she knew would be thrown away. So she rescued these items. And on our website, we have a finding aid that talks about all of the different health-related ledgers we have. And one of the most wonderful examples of how the collection is used is a year, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a little bit after the finding aid was completed. It took a few years for our volunteers to go through all the ledgers and see what we have and categorize them. And they did a wonderful inventory of everything that we have and what kind of information is in it too. So a woman called from down in Florida. She was maybe in her late 70s, and she found out we had a record from the Bessie Burke Hospital for her birth year, whatever the year was. And she was adopted when she was 2, and her birth certificate had the name of her adopted parents, didn't have her birth parents. And so she had no idea for her whole life who her birth parents were, what their names were. And then she found out we had this Bessie Burke ledger, and she knew she was born at the Bessie Burke Hospital. So we were able to go to the ledger, and she was born on Valentine's Day, and she was the only girl listed as being born that day. So we found her ledger, and it had her birth parents' names. So we were able to give her birth parents' names. And she never knew this for over 70 years. And she started crying. I think I probably started crying on the phone too. And she just said she felt like a piece of her was whole again. And it's just, you think like if 30 years earlier, or 40 years earlier, Eartha hadn't grabbed that letter from the basement, this lady in Florida wouldn't know her birth parents' names. And we have so many examples of that happening. And that's what I love too about like seeing things donated and then turning around recently, like soon or even years later, and then, oh my gosh, this was donated 10 years ago, but this is your grandfather, or something like that. So it's really neat when that happens. So that's from our health collection. And then this mask was donated by Jonas Stanza back in 2018, so before COVID. And this mask is from the 1918 flu pandemic. And it was made out of fabric from the duck mill. It was made by a Lithuanian young woman, again, made from fabric from the duck mill and worn during the 1918 flu. And so to have a mask like this, and again, he donated it well before COVID was on the way or was happening. And so we just thought, wow, what an incredible remainder from the 1918 flu. And then it just was all the more meaningful after we went through COVID ourselves. So in the collection at the History Center, we saved some clean masks that were one that was made in balance, and then just the cotton or the regular ones that we all wore, just as a record, the way this was kept as a record. Other items that I brought, actually I'll speak of Jonas Stanza again. He's also has been donating for a long time. So we have a lot of societies. And this is from a Lithuanian society, the sash and the hat. And this is a photo of Antana Stanza, Mother of God, Dawn Gates Maria, which was established in 1905 in Lawrence. And so when the men in this organization were at functions or say at a parade or something, they would wear this way with the purple. And then if they were to go to a funeral of one of their members, when they were in mourning, they would turn it inside out and wear the black facing out. And we have so many other ledgers and just pictures and records of the different ethnic societies that were in Lawrence. Another way to look up information about who was in Lawrence, either businesses or societies or people, are the city directories here on the end. And those are kind of like similar setup to phone books, where you can look up the people by last name. These have much more information than that. You can look up people by last name, and it will tell you where they lived, where they worked. In later, 1915 and later, it will give the wife's name in parentheses. Also in 1915 and later, you can look up by address. So you can look up, say, 200 Broadway, see who lived there or what businesses were there, and you can go year to year and look it up. So the other day, a researcher came in who bought a building on Essex Street, or she owns it, but she's doing some renovations to it. She wanted to know the history of it. So we used the city directories and looked up the address year to year to see what the different uses were. And the funny thing is, currently it's a barbershop and a restaurant, and even 100 years ago it was a barbershop and a saloon, so things don't really change, just the people change. And then we have Lawrence High, a lot of Lawrence High materials. We have Lawrence High yearbooks. We have from about, I would say the 1940s on, not every single year. And then the years prior to that, we don't have any. I don't know if they didn't make them or what, because the library seems to have what we have and not have what we don't have. And we have, so these are, you're welcome to look at after. Then we have a huge photograph collection, like I said. So some of the photos come like this. This is more rare, but we have this beautiful album of photos from a family. And the album's falling apart a little, but we kept the photos the way they are in the album. Whereas other photos, they come loose and we put them in plastic protectors. And again, the researcher looks at the copy and these get put away. These actually were just donated and they were on the flood of 1936, so they were very topical. Then we have some hands-on material that is in the collection, but it's not accessioned. And what that means is we have it and we take as best care of it as we can, but we don't do kind of like the extra step. So, meaning you can touch it and put your hands in it. So what I brought today were some cotton samples we were given a couple years ago that it's for hands-on, so you can touch it. And then I also brought some wool samples. These were made in Lawrence Mills, some of the wool. And then this case was made in the Pacific Mills. And it would travel, so we kind of call it our traveling salesman case, where someone would bring it to the different, wherever they were going to show a sampling of, this is the type of fabric the Pacific Mills made. And Pacific Printworks printed cotton, and you'll see, it shows you the stages, so the kind of cotton from the bale, which is what is in there, is here, and then the different stages, and then the beautiful patterns that it has. We have several of these with which showcase different things, some wool, some cotton. This I brought, you're welcome to each take one if you'd like, and maybe I'll leave some here too. So the volunteer that was going through our education, our Lawrence Public Schools collection, Mary Panos, found this is photocopy, we have the original, but this Palmer Method handwriting guide. And she had it, and so we have another volunteer, college intern, who's having trouble reading cursive because they don't. A lot of times we're finding now that our interns cannot read cursive, they don't learn it. And so, sort of as a joke, Mary gave this to Isabella, our intern, and said, "Oh, use this like a guide," and she did, and it was helpful. So I thought it was a fun thing to be able to have and give out. And so we made a whole bunch of copies. So anyone's welcome to take this. But that is something to think about. Like so much of our material is in cursive writing, and if you can't read it, it's going to be inaccessible to you or to whomever. Then these are some Lawrence history books, general books about Lawrence history that have photos, and these are all extras, so I brought them. We have them preserved in the collection as well, but these are more hands-on. hands-on materials. Oh, the xylophone. So this is another example of something hands-on. A donor recently gave us her family photos. Her family came over from Germany, and she gave us, probably 100 photos really of her family, the different family members. And then she wanted to know if we wanted the xylophone, because it was given to her as a young girl. And we thought it's not necessarily something we would put in the collection, because we focus on Lawrence, and we do sometimes take things not Lawrence related, but we really have to keep that focus, otherwise we don't have enough room to store everything. So we don't take something just because it's old. It really has to be related to Lawrence. But we thought this would be something good, and you can try it out after. Because we'll get sometimes groups, like last summer we got a group from Lawrence Community Works Movement City who were studying like music and performing and arts and culture. So we thought this would be a good hands-on piece. And then these things, we have a collection called Ephemera, which ephemera is material that would be otherwise thrown away, like a ticket stub or a program or a membership card. And this was Eartha's membership to the YWCA, March 1984. We had several of that. And just again, a connection to Eartha, the Y. And then these are just some pretty ones, like this is a dentist ad. And then this was just a neat Army guide that shows you what the different patches mean. And this was Lawrence Savings Bank. So we have promotional items too that we're given, that businesses would give out. We work with other local organizations. Like I said, one thing we worked on was the Lawrence World War I project with City Council President Mark LaPlante. And Councilor LaPlante went around to all the different places in Lawrence that there's a square or an intersection named after someone who died in World War I, and he researched the story of these men. And online, you can watch videos, 3-minute videos that show pictures and have someone narrate it. But there's also, you can kind of also drive around and go all throughout the city and look at where the intersections are. And then each intersection has a sign with a QR code that you can then also click with your phone and watch the video. So these you're welcome to take as well. And I have some Lawrence History Center brochures in my card that you're welcome to take also. And I'll stop now and let you all have a chance to look through the material if you want, or if you have any more questions, happy to answer them. Actually, I'll point out one other donation. This was Mr. Dagnall and his family donated. I didn't bring it because it's too big, but it's a knotting machine that was used in, I think we're not sure which mill, but it was used in one of the Lawrence mills and was donated, or given to Warren, right, in the 1980s. But it's an actual machine about this big. It's in a custom case, and it was used to knot the ends of the fabric. And it was donated by Mr. Dagnall's brother, Warren, and family. That's who the donation is from officially. But it was delivered a couple weeks ago, and it's in a beautiful custom case. And we opened it with our summer writing program students. That's something else that we do, that we have information about on our website. And we had the students guess what is in. So some kids thought it was treasure, someone thought it was filled with books, someone thought it was empty. So there were all kinds of guesses, and then we were able to open it up and show them. So it's a beautiful condition. And it's special to have because it's the mills, when they closed, the machinery that went down south, it was melted down. There's no, remnant of all the machinery that was used. So to have this piece that we know what it was used for, it's in a custom case, is really special to have. And we're grateful to the family for donating it. And donating it, not only donating it, but paying for shipping all the way up to Lawrence, because it's heavy. So that's something interesting. It's at the History Center, so too big to bring. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, just maybe it's quick, but as you were saying, it's not only what we're doing today is going to be history tomorrow or 2 years from now. Are there like organizations that you reach out to now when you know they're doing something significant to be like, hey, do you have the building plans or pictures?
Yeah, so we worked a little bit with the St. Alfeo Society because they're gearing up for their 100th Feast of the Three Saints on Labor Day, and our Board Secretary, Sarah, is very involved with the Feast of the Three Saints. And so we did a project, we started a project where people could to share on our website memories that they have of the feast. And we were hoping to collect 100 memories for 100 years. And so we also provided them with some photos we had of the feast over the years. We didn't have a huge amount, but we had some. So we worked with them trying to drum up more donations to the History Center, chronicling the feast, and also spread awareness that they're having their 100th anniversary. And then we collect, like, the Bread and Roses Festival. We have a table there every year. We'll keep their programs from that. We work a lot with, for, say, younger generations, like Elevated Thought, which is a local art and social justice organization. They're right across the street in the Everett Mill, and they'll come to the History Center to do research from time to time for different things. So luckily we get a lot that's donated, but we will also offer, even for local places to do research if they want to do more research to learn more about maybe their history, like with Lazarus House. They happen to come in, but we happen to also have all these brochures and flyers from them over the years.
And perhaps you covered it with your student or camp program. Did you talk about?
I didn't really. That's okay. So you may have heard of Bread Loaf program. Bread Loaf is out of Middlebury College, and there's a smaller program called Andover Bread Loaf based out of Phillips Academy, and it's Bread Loaf is creative writing and art and just enjoying the art of writing. And so there was one at Phillips for a long time for 8 kids going in 8th grade and high schoolers. Then there was one at the Boys and Girls Club for younger children, 2nd graders, 1st graders, but there wasn't anything for middle school students. So back in 2015, we created the program called Rising Loaves, and that's for kids going into 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. And it's part of, under the umbrella of Andover Bread Loaf. But it's held at the Lawrence History Center in our courtyard in the stable. We make it into a classroom. For those 3 weeks, the courtyard is closed for parking. So no one drives in there while the kids are in there. But the kids really have kind of the run of the place in there, just in history for 3 weeks. The camp is not history focused necessarily, but it always covers it. They learn about the collapse of the Pemberton Mill. Of course, they get a tour of the History Center. Last year, they learned all about the canals, and they took tours of the canals and learned about the issues of maintenance and upkeep of the canals. So there's always a history aspect. And we find, the kids who, then they go home and share what they've learned with their parents or with their siblings. So it's a great way to spread history and also get people to feel comfortable, like coming into an archive and just coming in and knowing that they have space here to learn about history. And that, again, that's held in July, every July, and it's free for Lawrence middle schoolers, and it's for kids going into 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. So we just wrapped it up about 2 weeks ago.
And Anita, I'll just add, Lawrence General Hospital, as some of you may know, it has its origins right up here on Methuen Street, okay? Then in 1899, it moved to the old William Russell estate, as in the Russell Paper Company that used to be here in Lawrence. So he donated the land to the Ladies Charitable Aid Society, right, which established Lawrence General Hospital on Mr. Russell's estate, which is the property that you see now where the hospital is located. Then, of course, there's been additions and renovations over the years, And the School of Nursing that Lawrence General used to run, as some of you may know or remember, it lasted until 1977.
Yeah.
So that would be like 1977 or earlier.
Yeah. And the Alumni Association disbanded only a couple, maybe right before the pandemic, because they were, members were getting older. And but yeah, it was a long time. Many people went to that school.
Yeah.
Rich is a former board member, Lawrence History Center board member, and we work together quite often. Yeah. It's really nice because, again, people will come to the History Center thinking they want to see an exhibit and we don't have one, or they want a walking tour and we get that a lot. Yeah. So we'll send them to Rich, and then if someone goes to Rich who's wanting to do more in-depth research, they'll come to us. Yep. So it's wonderful Lawrence has that. And also the Lawrence Public Library has a special collections too. So you can research there. If you're looking for old newspapers, they're on microfilm at the library. They have a lot of Lawrence Fire Department material. They have yearbooks as well. They have city directories. So it's really great to study history in Lawrence because there's all different places where you can go to learn about it. So I'll stop now, but I'll be here. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to share with everybody, you can even get help that you never expected you were going to get by going to the archives. Several years ago, Anita had a guy come in. He was an older gentleman with his niece and nephew, and he wanted her to look up a property in Lawrence. It was he had grown up there in, I think, the 1930s or something. So she says, "Oh, what's the address, sir?" So he tells her, and she looks and she says, "You gotta be kidding me." And he says, "No, why, did it burn down or something?" She says, "No, not only did it not burn down, but I grew up in that house. My mother still owns it. For some reason, I don't even live there." So I got to meet the people who lived in my house in the 30s, so it was a benefit to them. And it was a benefit to me, and I was very fortunate. My son had been visiting earlier in the month, so that he's very organized. And the house was still in such a way I could let people in. But that was great. You never know. And actually, we found the original owner of the house too. That one time I was in.
Yeah. One time someone visited from New York, and it turned out it was related to one of our volunteers who was in that day. Yeah, there's so many connections. We find that a lot. And Lawrence, again, I know I keep saying it, but it's such a special place to be, and the history is so special, and it's such a special history to study. And I feel like people are connected to Lawrence in a, I don't want to say in a way they're not to other cities, but we have a Facebook page. We have about 11,000 followers, 11 or 13,000, I'm forgetting. But we have a huge amount of followers from all over the world, and there's always comments about how much they love the city, even if these people live far away now. I guess I'll stop now, but I'll still be here. And if anyone wants to look through anything or has any questions, you can take your time looking through. I'm not in a hurry to get, I'm not on schedule.